You know, we hear about the Magi visiting baby Jesus every Christmas, but have you ever really thought about what made their journey so remarkable? We're going to take a deep dive today into their story and uncover some deeper meaning.
It's a story that often gets lost in the holiday shuffle.
Well,
Yeah, but it's packed with powerful lessons, even for us today.
for sure. We've got this excerpt that really digs into how these wise men, from the East can serve as a model for how we should approach our faith. So before we get too far, let's start with the basics. Who were these magi anyway? I mean, we hear wise men, we hear kings. What's the real story?
Right, so the term Eastern, it's more about a region than like a specific nation. Think of it as like the general area where the sun rises. And Magoi, that word,
Yeah.
it usually gets translated as astrologers or wise men, not necessarily kings, like in those nativity scenes.
Okay, so maybe not royalty in the traditional sense, but they definitely were searching for something big. What do we know about their background?
Most scholars think they were probably Persian astrologers. And get this, Persia is thousands of miles from Bethlehem. That's a trip most of us wouldn't even try today, let alone, by camel.
That's wild, and it really shows you their commitment. They saw something in the stars, a sign, and they just went for it. Talk about dedication.
Exactly. And it wasn't some quick trip either. It was long, tough, probably full of dangers and uncertainty. Imagine what they had to face. Deserts, mountains, maybe even bandits along the way.
Like the hymn says, over the mountains and the sea, following the star they came. That's more than just a nice song. It really shows their relentless pursuit. Makes you think, what kept them going through all that? What fueled their determination?
Now, that's a question we can all ask ourselves. What drives us in our own spiritual journeys? Is it just a fleeting feeling, or is it something much deeper, something unshakable?
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of what matters most. But the Magi, they didn't let anything stop them. They were laser-focused on their destination. And it's so interesting, when they finally get there, they don't go to Herod, who, according to the source material, was actually the one who sent them on this whole quest to begin with. They totally bypass this powerful king and go straight to a baby.
We often miss that little detail, but it's actually super important. They skipped the worldly power and went straight to the source of real power, the newborn king.
And it wasn't just a quick hello. They didn't just stop by to say congrats. They bowed down before this baby. A gesture that might seem a little much in today's world.
But think about it. In their culture, and even in Scripture, bowing down was a powerful act. It was reserved for God. It showed you acknowledge someone's divine authority.
So they were recognizing something truly amazing about this child, and the language here is key. The original Greek word for worship is proskuneo. And you know where else that same word appears?
When Satan tempts Jesus, offers him all the kingdoms of the world, if he'll just proskuneo him.
Wow, that adds a whole other level to this story. It's not just about respect. It's about who or what you ultimately choose to worship.
You got it. They could have easily been swayed by earthly power, by the allure of Herod's court. But they saw something more, something greater, in this humble little baby. That's a question for us, isn't it? What are we tempted to bow down to? Are we focused on the things of this world, or on the true source of life and meaning?
That's a powerful question. It's like they're saying, we found the real king, and it's not who you think.
And that act of worship, that proskuneo, it's a foundation for everything that comes next. They weren't just acknowledging Jesus, they were proclaiming his divinity, even as a baby.
It's like they're saying, this is the one we've been waiting for. And speaking of pronouncements, let's talk about those gifts. They didn't show up empty-handed. They brought some serious treasures, chosen specifically for this newborn king.
And these weren't just random presents. They were deeply symbolic, filled with meaning and purpose. Each one a proclamation of who Jesus was and what his mission would be.
Okay, hit me with it. What did they bring, and what did it all mean?
Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Each gift a powerful statement. The gold, of course, symbolizes kingship, acknowledging Jesus as the King of Kings. It's a fitting tribute to the one who would ultimately rule over all creation.
Makes sense. But what about frankincense? That one seems a little more out there.
Frankincense was a big deal back then. It was used in the temple to worship God. It points to Jesus' role as a bridge between humanity and the divine. In fact, in Exodus, God actually gives specific instructions on how to create incense, using frankincense for the tabernacle, that sacred space where people would meet with God.
So it's directly connecting Jesus to the divine, like a fragrant offering, a symbol of prayer rising up to heaven. And finally, myrrh. I don't know, that one always felt kind of somber, especially for a newborn baby.
You're right, myrrh is definitely more complex. It was often used for burial, foreshadowing Jesus' ultimate sacrifice, his death for humanity's salvation. It reminds us that Jesus was born not just to live, but to die, to offer himself as a sacrifice for our sins.
Wow. It's like they were proclaiming his whole life's purpose, his mission, right from the very start. It's such a contrast to how we do gift giving today. We're all about what someone might want or like right now. But the Magi, they were thinking about who Jesus was and what his life would mean for everyone.
Absolutely. It wasn't about fleeting pleasures. It was about eternal truths, about acknowledging the divine nature of this child and the impact he would have on the world.
So we've got these wise men, seekers, traveling so far, guided by a star. They find baby Jesus and worship him as God, recognizing something incredible in him. And then they bring these meaningful gifts that point to his whole life and purpose. What a way to start a story.
And that's just the beginning. Their journey, their act of worship, the gifts, they all hold such deep lessons for us, even now. It's an invitation to think about our own faith journeys, how we understand worship, and what it really means to offer our lives as a gift to God.
You know, it's really interesting thinking about those gifts and like what they represent. They weren't just generic presents, you know? They were things connected to who Jesus was and his purpose.
Exactly. It's like they were saying, we see you, we get it, and we're giving you our best.
So if we apply that to us, what does it say about how we approach worship?
I think it pushes us to go beyond just rituals, going through the motions. True worship, it's about aligning ourselves with God's purpose, his plan. It's about getting his heart and offering our lives to his story.
So not just showing up on Sundays or saying the right words. It's about really understanding why we worship and letting that change how we live.
Exactly. It's about offering ourselves as living sacrifices, just like those gifts showed different sides of Jesus' life and what he came to do.
So how do we actually do that? It's not like we have gold, frankincense, and myrrh just lying around.
Well, let's start with gold. It represents kingship, right? Acknowledging Jesus as the ultimate authority. For us, that could look like giving up our own ambitions and wants and following God's will instead.
So not just saying God's in control. It's about really living that out. Making choices that show what he cares about, not just what we want.
You got it. It's about realizing our lives aren't really our own. They belong to him. And then there's frankincense, the symbol of worship and connecting with God. Today, that could be about building a deeper relationship with him through prayer, studying, looking for him in everything we do.
I love that picture of a fragrant offering. It's like making our lives a sweet smell to God. Not just through words, but what we do, our thoughts, our whole being.
And lastly, we have myrrh. This one's a little tougher because it represents sacrifice, even death.
Yeah, not exactly the warm, fuzzy feeling we usually get at Christmas time.
True, but it's a crucial part of the Christian story. We're called to die to ourselves, let go of our selfish wants, and choose to serve and love, even when it's hard.
Like saying, God, here's my life, the good, the bad, the ugly, because I trust you to take it and make something beautiful out of it.
I like that. And just like myrrh was used for burial, preparing the body for new life, our surrender to God lets him change us, resurrect us into something new.
It reminds us that sometimes you got to let go of the old to make room for the new. So the Magi's gifts, they weren't just about Jesus's identity. They were about how we respond, our call to action.
And if we zoom out to the bigger picture, it's a reminder that Christmas, it's not just about a baby in a manger. It's about a king who came to sacrifice himself for us, to bring us back to God.
It's a call to radical devotion, to giving our whole lives as a gift to the one who gave everything for us.
And I think that's something we can all consider. No matter our background or beliefs, what does it mean to truly give ourselves to something bigger than us, a cause, a belief that changes us deep down?
Wow, that's deep. Makes you wonder if the Magi were looking for signs today. What would they see? Would they recognize that same devotion and sacrifice in us?
That's an interesting thought. Honestly, are we living in a way that would catch the eye of someone searching for truth? Someone looking for hope?
Speaking of searching, our source material talks about how the word for worship, used here, proskuneo, it also shows up when Satan tempts Jesus. What's the significance there?
It's pretty wild, right? It shows how important discernment is. The same word can be used for bowing down to God and bowing down to temptation, to power, to things that lead us away from God.
So it's not the act of bowing down itself. It's who or what we're bowing down to that matters. Are we worshiping the Creator or the creation?
And that brings up a big question for us today. What are we tempted to put above God? What are the idols in our lives, the things we've let take his place?
It's easy to get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of life, chasing success, getting more stuff, that we forget what truly matters. Are we putting our jobs, our possessions, our desires, even our own sense of being good ahead of our relationship with God?
Exactly. And those can be sneaky. They can look good, even necessary. We can be so busy doing good that we miss the best thing, which is pursuing God with all our heart.
Like we're so focused on building our own little kingdoms, we forget we're already citizens of a much greater one.
And that pursuit, that citizenship, it takes constant checking in, asking ourselves, where's my heart really at? What am I truly worshiping?
This conversation is really getting me thinking, like peeling back layers of meaning, like those layers of myrrh used to anoint a body.
It's a reminder that true worship, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly looking at our hearts, surrendering to God, offering our lives as living sacrifices. And in that process, we're changed. Just like the Magi were changed when they met baby Jesus.
So their story, it's not just a history lesson. It's a guide for our own spiritual journeys. It's a call to search, to surrender, to give ourselves fully to the one who deserves it all.
And that journey, like theirs, it often has unexpected turns, challenges and unknowns.
But the reward, just like the joy the Magi must have felt when they found Jesus, it's priceless. It's about finding the real meaning of Christmas. The truth that God became human not to judge us, but to save us, to offer us a new life, a new way to be in the world.
And that new life, it starts with a simple but profound act, bowing down before the King, offering him our hearts, our minds, our lives.
And letting him make us into the people we were always meant to be.
And it's a journey that goes on long after we put away the Christmas decorations. It's a lifelong pursuit of aligning our hearts with God's heart, of offering ourselves as living sacrifices, just like the Magi did.
So we've talked about the Magi, their trip, their gifts, what true worship really means, what now, how do we take these big truths and make them real in our everyday lives? Our source material is really pushing this idea of the Magi as examples, for how we should live out our faith. But honestly, it feels kind of intimidating. I mean, traveling across continents just by following a star, that's a tough act to follow.
It's true. Their story is pretty remarkable. But instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, maybe we can see it as like an invitation.
An invitation to what?
To step into a deeper, more meaningful relationship with God. To embrace that same spirit of searching, the way the Magi did.
Okay, but how? It's not like we've got a literal star to follow.
Right, but I think it begins with being attentive like they were. That openness to signs, guidance, even just those little nudges from God.
Recognizing that God speaks to us in lots of different ways. Through the Bible nature, the people around us, even our own gut feelings.
Exactly. It's about tuning in to him.
Yeah.
Paying attention to those whispers of wisdom and direction. And then, like the Magi, having that willingness to go on the journey, even when we don't know what's ahead.
It's saying yes to God, even when we don't have it all figured out. Even when we're scared of where he might take us.
And that, yes, it might mean sacrifice. Just like the myrrh showed, we might have to let go of things we love, step out of our comfort zones, be okay with being uncomfortable for something bigger.
Thinking about myrrh and sacrifice, I'm wondering what that looks like for me. What am I holding on to that might be messing with my relationship with God? What myrrh am I being asked to give up?
That's a good question, and I think it's different for everyone. For some people, it might be giving up a bad habit or an addiction. For others, it could be letting go of anger or forgiving someone who hurt them.
Or maybe it's giving our time or resources to help others, putting energy into something bigger than ourselves.
Right. It's realizing that real worship means surrender, being willing to put down our own wants and plans so we can take on God's.
It's a journey of letting go and trusting God to provide, to lead us even when we can't see the way.
And ultimately, it takes us to the greatest gift of all, the same one the Magi found in that humble manger. A deep connection with the King of Kings, a love that changes us from the inside out.
It's that kind of love that makes us want to give our best, not because we have to, but because we're so thankful for what he's done for us.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by the Magi, let's be inspired by them. Remember that we can all experience that kind of deep worship.
And that it's not about rituals or empty actions. It's about a heart totally giving to God, a life lived his way. It's about becoming living gifts ourselves, sharing his love and grace with everyone around us.
Well said. And as we wrap up our deep dive, I'll leave you with this. What gift would you bring to the newborn king, knowing who he really is? What offering would show your love and devotion?
And as you think about that, consider this. The Magi followed a star. What guides you on your faith journey? What light are you following?
It's a journey full of wonder and possibility, and hopefully this deep dive has given you what you need to travel it with purpose and joy.
Until next time, keep searching, keep surrendering, and keep giving your best to the one who deserves it all.
Happy New Year.